I'm here with Kata Cserep, who's the Global Head of Aviation for PA Consulting at the SAF North America Congress here in Houston. Welcome, Kata. In your role, you have a panoramic view of how the industry is evolving. What major shifts are you seeing in North America at the moment?
It's interesting. We were also at this event last year, and at that point, the conversation was, I'd probably characterize it as somewhat trepidatious, a lot of uncertainty. And what's been interesting this year in 25, despite the change in administration, that somehow it feels more positive, that we seem to be talking more about how we're going to scale rather than if SAF is even going to take off, which was somewhat unexpected actually from compared to a year ago. But what is also interesting is the narrative around SAF, which has very clearly shifted from an emphasis on the sustainability aspects and decarbonisation to the other attributes of SAF, which are much more around economic opportunity, energy security, and so on. So that there's been a change in tone, a change in emphasis, but from what I'm picking up and what I'm hearing, it actually feels more positive and more practical about how do we scale rather than whether this is actually going to happen.
That's brilliant to hear. And I know PA Consulting recently launched a global report, Cacophony to Symphony, and successfully scaling sustainable aviation fuel. And it was built on surveys from almost 600 aviation and energy industry professionals. What were some of the standout findings for you?
It really was far-ranging, and I guess just for a bit of context, we went broad in terms of geography, but also broad in terms of the stakeholder landscape. So we surveyed investors, producers, airlines, airports, and policymakers from all different regions of the world. The thing that was really standout and clear is there is pretty much unanimous support and acceptance that SAF is the primary lever for the next couple of decades to decarbonize aviation. So that came through loud and clear, irrespective of region, irrespective of stakeholder. The cost barrier is also unanimous, pretty much. But what was quite interesting, and we tried to present this in sort of somewhat more engaging way through the infographics, is that there's a spread in the expectation of how much more expensive compared to jet SAF is going to be by 2030. So there is a different expectations between airlines versus producers, not surprisingly. Producers expect / hope that it'll be slightly more expensive than the airlines, which would completely make sense. But the clarity with which that has come through in the surveys it has been fascinating to see. And it's been fun to display through the graphics and the visuals. The other sort of standout finding, or I guess more conclusions, is more about the thematic consistency that we're picking up, irrespective of where you are. But what we tried to also do in the report is to identify things that will hold true and that will really help to scale. And we tried to distill this down into three main areas. And this comes through, whether you're looking at the US, whether you're looking at Australia, whether you're in the UK. And the three that we put this down to was, first of all, having to create the conditions for success. And it's interesting, the respondents in North America, for example, take a very different view of what those conditions might be. It's very much a let the market work, provide incentives. In Europe, the conditions for success are seen as slightly different, and it's more prescriptive as characterized by the mandate. So that's the first one. The second one is playing back to that cost focus, pulling everyone behind that mission. What can you do to make this more affordable in order to help the scale up? So again, there are pretty practical strategies that are coming out from the report, looking at what everyone in the value chain can do, whether it's the producers looking to optimize the production costs, the feedstocks, whether it's the market mechanisms, or whether it's creative commercial structures that can help bring that end price point down to help with the scale. And then the last one, this is perhaps the one that sticks in my mind the most and is really applicable, whoever you are, is this message that starting small and accepting that this market's going to change and your role, your business model will have to adapt as you scale. I think that's one that we will keep coming back to, and we'll see examples from whether it's an airline, whether it's a SAF producer or an investor in this space, that comes out loud and clear. And the report's full of it's not just PA's words, it's anecdotes, it's case studies that help to bring this to life. So it's been a really fun one to compare.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating, the differences from region to region and the perspectives. Obviously, policy and incentives differ quite significantly across regions. You touched upon it just then. I mean, how do you see the most effective regulatory models emerging, and what lessons could others take from them?
It's longevity and predictability that seems to be valued more than anything else. It's almost as if having no policy or even a perceived suboptimal policy is better than a policy that flip-flops. So it's the word whiplash was just used just now. Is this a couple of years ago, all eyes were on California, and now all eyes are on the UK. And then perhaps, who knows where all eyes are going to be next year. That unpredictability is really unhelpful. And then on the flip side, having predictable long-term policy frameworks is definitely seen as attractive. So from the UK, where I'm based, it's been interesting to see that in the last year or so, now that the mandate is in place and there is greater confidence that the revenue certainty mechanism is coming, and we've just had the third round on the Advanced Fuels Fund, that is seen by the market as a committed, longer-term policy direction. And you can see it in the level of interest. Investment attention is now looking at the UK as an attractive market, much more so than even 2 years ago.
That's fascinating, and perhaps a model to sort of replicate across the world as well.
Well, either replicate or adapt. Every market, and we've said this for some time. One of the really, I think, superpowers of SAF is that it's not one thing. And it can be many different things for many different economies. So if you're a small country, there'll be particular feedstock attributes, there'll be particular demand factors. If you're a large country, there will be appropriate policies and appropriate technology pathways and feedstock combinations that will make sense for you. And I think that's going to be really interesting. So I certainly wouldn't say lift and shift, but look around certainly and pick elements that will be suitable for your country.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you've touched upon this already a little bit, but here at the Congress and what we've heard in the past 3 days now that we come to the close of the event, what conversations do you hope have been happening between stakeholders to turn today's momentum into some meaningful scale-up of SAF?
Practical ones rather than daydreaming ones, and without spilling anything, I shouldn't. I can tell you there have been practical business deals. There are deals being signed. There are new ideas being formed, and oftentimes it's around how can we spread this risk in a creative way. There is a risk. We have to accept that there is a risk and there is a gap from where we're trying to go to and where we are now. But what we're seeing is collaboration across the sector, across finance, across technology development, across off-takers and policymakers to try and figure out how everyone can take a little bit more risk, perhaps take maybe a little bit less of a return, but come up with a structure that helps to move the whole ecosystem forward. And those are the conversations that I think are happening. We're happy to be part of some of them, but there are many others. Those practical small steps that I referred to a few minutes ago about just try something small, do a pilot, and then adapt as you scale, as you learn, because everybody in this ecosystem is learning with each deal. And it's the studies and the forecasts and the roadmaps are great. They set a direction, but it's only when you're having a bilateral business dealing, you're actually signing an MOU, you're then following that through, the real learning comes, and this event has been great for that.
Fantastic. Small steps to move the ecosystem forward. Love to hear.
That's it.
Kata, thanks very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.